Hi, I'm Matt Wyman, CEO and co-founder of Acario. Acario provides agent simulation. We simulate users to break your agents before your customers do. Joining me today for this conversation is Hank Leber, co-founder and GTM leader at Stanify. Hank, welcome.
Hey Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Let's kick off by telling people a little bit about Stanify. What are you up to and how did you arrive there?
Yep. Stanify is an AI company that helps businesses engage with their audiences more on social media in the comments and DM sections. So it turns out most businesses don't do a very good job getting into the comments and DMs. We help them do that at scale, in safe ways, in proactive ways, and with workflows so that they can actually be touching every single consumer with the help of AI.
Hmm. All the different conversations. I can't help but notice I've become really attuned, if you will, to how people describe themselves in market and how you sort of structure yourself. And I notice you started off with, we are an AI company. Like maybe you can talk a little bit more about that decision, about whether are you an AI company that delivers a solution, or are you a solution that happens to use AI? And I'm going to double up the question here and ask you also, how do you think about that as it relates to the people you're presenting it to in the enterprise?
Yeah, great set of questions. I'll start with the history of social media, at least my experience with it. I've been working in and around social for 15 years. The reason we start with we're an AI company is there's been a lot of software built for social. Automated triggers, post scheduling, whatever, all this stuff like tools, MarTech and all that. So that's fine. It's not anywhere close to as effective as when AI is applied to messaging and actions. And so we don't want to get lumped into some MarTech company without them knowing that AI is powering what we're doing. So that's why we are an AI company that. So that's positioning wise. However, with the product, we've found that with Standify, we can help hide negative comments that are in a business's page, religious hate speech, bullying, harassment, like really nasty things. And that safety is a problem that we solve right out of the gate. And we're working with Fortune 100 brands who very much want that at scale, which we can do better than any humans could anyways. So that solves a problem. However, all of the engagement that we bring and engagement opportunities to be replying to comments or drafting the replies for the internal teams to be approving, workflows based on intent that we can detect if someone wants to buy or someone has questions, wants customer service, which we can even answer those. That's all opportunities to run your business better. So that's all opportunity zone. So we kind of have
Hmm.
both.
Hmm. I mean, the route in then seems like you may have a couple different routes in, depending on which party is actually the more concerned with sort of the community safety and their ability to actually communicate with consumers. How are you finding your routing or
Yeah.
navigating that?
Exactly right. So in our some part of our go-to-market strategy, this is not really trade secrets. It's pretty obvious. We can find businesses online who have a bunch of negativity in their comments and they're not doing anything about it. So we would reach out to them and say, "Hey, you got a lot of angry people over here, or people are platforming your channel. Like you don't have to have that out there. So we can go detect those. And also just a bunch of comments that are going unanswered. We can also see that. So it's pretty obvious to see the companies who need the help, and then we just kind of like knock on the front door, like literally front door, no tricks. Hey, you're not doing that stuff. We do that. And then we have a very, very high close rate once we get into a conversation with businesses and show them what can be done by way of our technology. So we don't really know our core messaging yet because it kind of
Hmm.
depends on the business and the problem that they have. So we have kind of like a set of solutions, and that's working so far. We're a pretty new company, so we'll probably tune that in. But right now, we enjoy having different value props for different types of businesses.
I mean, I find that with the large enterprises, ownership of community can be spread out across a lot of different areas,
Hmm.
and certainly safety. And I mean, you could easily discover this in marketing. You could see it as part of CX. There are a couple different owners, if you will. I mean, who are you finding has the most affinity to these sort of concerns?
Mostly marketing is the answer to the question, because they're going to have a purview over a lot of stuff. CX can be related to marketing, or they are, bedfellows and talk to each other. But marketing is the one that usually perks up when we're talking. We've talked with like head of AI at giant corporations. They pass us to marketing. Marketing goes, "Oh my God, yes, please," and then they close quickly. So we're seeing that this is a marketing and communications thing. at least for now. The thing that we know is over the course of months and eventually years, the amount of data that we have about your brand by way of all of the comments, all of them, and all of the people who commented, and we keep all of that, by the way. So we have like a graph of sentiment that can be sifted and sorted by day part, by campaign, by type of post, by user. That is going to appeal to marketing and the C-suite. And that's actually the most important part of our business is that we're a data company more than an AI company. AI is just the means to the end, which is data. So eventually we may not say we're an AI company at all because it's not going to matter.
Well, this is
In
what
the
I was
future,
wondering.
everything's an AI company, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was wondering. Are you coming in via, are they looking for companies via an AI mandate, or are they believing in you because you have that AI element in there? They're learning to trust that, okay, if this is going to get solved, it's either going to be a lot of humans reading a lot of threads, which is not very realistic, and they've already probably tried it and given up, or it's going to have to be AI. But I'm just curious if that mandate is something that you're actually feeling as you're having these conversations.
So short answer is I don't know, but what we do know is right now, starting with we're an AI company that dot dot dot, we get meetings in the front door of big giant businesses without having to have a secret connection within. And that may be because of the mandate of exploring AI and all the headlines of everything moving to AI. So that's probably it for this moment in time. But when we get into it and show the product and the value propositions that come from it, it's not the AI part. It's the value that comes from it. The coverage, the ability to scale the unscalable things like reading and protecting against 100,000 comments a month, pulling out the 18,000 that shouldn't be in there automatically and near perfectly. Like we can catch everything, including typos and misspellings and all of that. I think the value is what gets us through to the signed contract, not the AI part.
Not the mandate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, as I've been talking to different people and looking at the market, I think that we're in an interesting moment where the mandate, the AI mandate, which has been, fairly well described and discussed all over the market, is actually just an excuse to go back and look at problems that weren't solved previously. And or I should say, it's giving people an excuse to go back and look at problems that haven't been solved previously, that were always important, but maybe they didn't have the time or energy to get into, and actually give them a moment to look at them and say, yeah, I would like to have this solved. Can someone solve this additional problem? Because I'm seeing a lot of new applications of agents in AI as opposed to replacement. I mean, the replacement exists in addition, but I think you're very much describing something where, sure, there was a path, it was just hyper inefficient. Now here's a new methodology that is efficient. Now you can actually solve the problem that you previously couldn't. And so then allows you to move forward. So that mandate then is serving, and maybe not the purpose that it's intended to serve, but nonetheless is serving a greater purpose at the enterprise
Yep.
to actually create the efficiency.
Absolutely.
Um,
And by the way, enterprise, we have traction there right out of the gate, which is great. The value props we're talking about apply all the way down the middle and the long tail, and we have smaller companies. We're onboarding one at a time. We don't have a self-serve product right now, just because with enterprise we have a lot of work to do. But this is all business. Being able to do more with your own time. We're saving the time and energy to do a lot of the coverage, but also allows you to be more strategic in your thinking and your decision making. Use your imagination, use your taste, use your correlations to make decisions. It's empowerment. It's not elimination of human resources. It's reallocating them somewhere better for your business, which is what
right, and
most of this AI transformation is supposed to be, not job losses, like time and energy transfers. If you're smart and you have value to the company, go do those things instead.
yeah, absolutely. And then, but also in your particular case, you're also applying something that may have gone unchecked or unviewed. And it's interesting if you're going from top to bottom, enterprise, all the way through to, any business that's showing up and saying, "Hey, I have a community. I have people with, whether it's in Discord or it's in LinkedIn or whoever, wherever it is." Um, I'm curious how you're thinking. Maybe it's too early, but how are you thinking about some of your pricing and packaging along those
Yes,
lines?
it
Because you have
is.
a lot of dimensions you could use.
It is too early. Period.
Yeah.
Pricing is a wild art mixed with science right now in the AI space. And a little bit just from the front lines to tell you, like, we know that we're saving enterprise companies tens of thousands of dollars a month, and that's per workspace. And a workspace for Standify is a brand or a product in a country or market. And the
Hmm.
social media accounts with that brand. A soda pop beverage, diet, whatever, cola. And in like Turkey versus Pakistan versus Nigeria, they're all different languages and they have different teams, they have different budgets and different community needs. So for us, we can solve for hundreds of workspaces. However, all those humans that are using all the using Stanify, they're getting a value that's relative to their business, but they also, on any given day, are using ChatGPT for free, or the Pro that's
Yes.
$20 a month, or the maximum, which is like 200. So it's a whole new paradigm of pricing and value, which is being led by the open AIs of the world, who are hemorrhaging money by the hundreds of millions, billions. But it brings a perspective in to the business world that is very high expectations for value and pricing. Like, I think gone are the days where you can have the enterprise seat-based SaaS pricing and just crank up 20, 30, 40, 50K a month just because. Like, you can't really do that anymore. So that's a longer way of saying in pricing for us right now, it's all in discovery mode on value pricing versus expectations and functionality, and it's a wild time. The feedback we're getting from the market, whether it's Fortune 100 companies or little tiny startups, it's all over the place. So for us, we just want to make sure we have the value nailed and we can really understand what we bring to the table over our first year here is actually more important than having the exact right price.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
about understanding the value
Yeah,
is
and
a key goal.
also the packaging, like how do you want to even structure it? I've heard I love the fact that it's a Wild West right now. I mean, I've heard everything from people who are packaging around this concept of a digital employee. So they're like, you're not buying software, you're actually buying a digital employee. You're not even buying, you're essentially working with this digital employee. And so you're going to pay some sort of, weekly or hourly or, tends not to be hour, but I have heard weekly, I've heard sprint based, I've heard all sorts of other measures that are used. So it's fascinating. I want to go back to your comment about the different communities. A single brand has many, you call them workspaces, but as I think about different geographies, even for the same product, the conversations about that product can be wildly different. The interpretation can be different. The positioning in that market can be quite different in each one. So, in a sense, you're working on like community health. You're turning that into a product, and it happens to be through conversation. Um, do you see this as something where you're helping them build a longer term, more durable conversation in each of those areas that then you sort of help them? You don't just deal with the terrible talk, you actually help them build an an actual conversation that then becomes a long-term trend and positive change in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very well put and well said. We've heard from particular enterprise clients, their community needs are different in every market, every country. That's why the teams are different and the messaging is different. The product lines are different. Cultures are different. In some countries, people ask, "What's the price? What's the price? What's the price?" a lot in the comments. When the price is easy to
Yep,
find online,
posted.
they do it anyways because that's what social is for them, is that kind of stuff, versus another country where they're not doing that at all. They just want to purchase, or they're not engaged very much because they're detached from the brand, whatever. So the community needs are down to the individual countries of brands that are in 180 countries. That's all, and they have 400 products. That's a lot of different communities. And what we've found to be the unifying theme is safety is very important and not being done well by humans. And so we bring that in immediately, and that happens instantly. Day one, minute one, you go from not as safe to safe. And that then allows the brands to have a healthier environment to foster more conversations with their customers and potential customers that they've just never been able to do before. Either never because they weren't doing it at all, or because they were afraid to do it because of the negativity that could come. And so it's been a like a trapped sort of fallow environment for years. Like, we're seeing some of these Fortune 100 brands, they turned off comments on their entire Instagram page like years ago. They just gave up because
Yeah.
it wasn't manageable. And so now we're allowing them to actually manage their conversations and their communities at scale, which I think is a really exciting time for media and marketing, because it's going to turn the world into a conversation at scale, one to one, by the millions, with brands to their fans. And that's
So
very
that's the
exciting.
it is exciting if it goes that way, but I'm trying to imagine, is that where it's actually going to go? Because you're going to drop into each one of these communities finally some activation. Like you're going to start to activate those communities and give them the opportunity to actually have the conversation. So then the first question is, well, who's going to have that conversation? Is it going to be an agent or is it going to be a human? And my bet is it's probably going to be an agent, right? Guided by humans. So not alone, not an agent with no touch, but it's going to be probably a digital presence of some sort.
Yes.
But we're also starting to see on the other side, we're starting to see people who are, bringing in these agents to represent them to go out in the world and answer emails and give quick responses in different threads. So, I mean, are you kind of, we may be a few years away from it, but are you sure you're not making an agent for agents, an agent to agents problem here or opportunity?
It's a great question. The truth is humans want things. So, as long as humans want things, whether it's a human going out and talking to another human to get to get their thing, or someone else does it, it's it's not really that doesn't matter. So let's take an example. I want to book a trip to Cabo. Right now, the agentic AI world allows you to say to your agent, "Hey, go book me a trip to Cabo on October 7th for 4 days. Pick the best place and whatever, whatever," and all the details he's put in the prompt. That agent will go call Cabo hotels who probably have an agent on their end who answer, and then they talk. You've seen these videos, right? The agents talk to each other to get it done. The human still wanted the vacation. The hotel still wanted the human. So that part about agents talking to agents, who cares? Who cares? As long as humans still want things. What I'm worried about way more than this you're talking about is when humans are plugged into some virtual reality thing and they're detached from reality completely and they don't even want things anymore. That is way more concerning than whether agents talk to agents to get you what you want. That's going to be actually awesome, I think, for the most part. Now, there's exceptions, relationships and, whatever. There's probably 10 different categories where that's dangerous. But in commerce, which is where we are mostly, it seems like a great thing. It's going to get more people what they want faster and better and improve relationships with the brand. And to go back to the first part of your question, who is doing the talking from the brand? The architect of the brand persona, which is great if they know how they want to show up, but they can do it 10,000 times a second versus having to sit there and have a human like trying to interpret what the brand guidelines said to do. That's inefficient. So the brands can actually be themselves way more with the help of agentic AI.
Yeah, I think I mean, I buy that. I think there's a transitive property here. It's like if A equals B and B equals C, well, then A is C. So I hear you also articulating a transitive property. If a human is the one who wanted the action done and it happens to be performed by agents, it's not like I'm walking around with, setting up bits and putting bits into all the different SaaS products one by one. No, I'm trusting a whole series of different systems between me and the other side to actually get the work done. I'm not, sending a mail across. So who cares if it happens to be agentic or if it was an HTTP whatever across to another system. So ultimately, it's still a human that made the request. But then I do find that the other side is a little less obvious to me in terms of the conversation because it does feel as though there's a feedback loop, a positive, beneficial feedback loop that helps guide the brand, that helps guide the conversation. And figuring out how to balance that feels like a new skill in the world to figure out like how do you go through and say this is my brand guideline, this is how I want the conversation to move, these are the focuses, the outcomes. But what if it doesn't work? What if that agent's using it and discovering it doesn't get to the right outcomes and starts to create feedback? So there seems like there's an opportunity to continue to refine what that pathway looks like. It's not just a one-way path. It's that there are a set of feedback loops. I don't know if you figured them out. I certainly have not seen others have yet figured it out, but it seems to be the opportunity's there.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And we are right on that feedback loop topic. So with comments, they're the most pure and raw source of feedback you can get as a brand. Short of one-on-one conversations and even a focus group, I would say that social comments are actually more honest because there's not a camera on you. So our access to data, it's a lot of it. It's very noisy. It's not been condensed and not been distilled. That feedback loop is extremely important to brand, extremely valuable, put it that way. It hasn't been done before. So we can show sentiment about a post and not just like positive, negative. It's like, why was it positive? What did they like about it most? What did they not like about it? And that is turning into a guiding light for brands in a way they've just never had before. So instead of like inventing your brand tone and your strategy for the year and your campaigns and all, which is how advertising's worked forever. That was me in a former life as a strategist. Like I literally lived that world. Now you can be understanding your fans and crowd instantly, always, and have the trends build themselves by way of they'll develop themselves by way of our data, which is a whole new level of insight for brands to use in understanding their feedback loops and improving them. And for us, the sort of like, gold star that we're looking at in the future is when brands know so much about their audience that in interactions with each individual feel like a very contextually relevant conversation. Hey, Matt, remember when you went to Cabo that time? Yeah, well,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be great? Yeah, I saw that you mentioned this thing over here. I mean, you could go back there and we could help you with whatever. Like that level of specificity, that's the advertising. It's not some TV ad anymore. That's going to look stupid in a few years that anybody would do that anymore as a brand when you can literally hit each individual with relevant messaging. And we're able to help make that possible.
Yeah, I mean that resonates really strongly with me. Maybe I spent too many years in the enterprise, but I have this image of the QBR where not only are you going through and thinking about and looking at, okay, what happened last quarter, what are we doing next quarter, that quarterly business review, but I'm suddenly struck that there's this opportunity to have feedback and have a more direct understanding of how the consumer felt in the past quarter about the things that you actually did. But then when I start thinking about that, it doesn't feel like a marketing activity anymore. That goes beyond marketing. So then it leads me, and I'm just going to keep on going. It leads me right into like, well, what about the governance of that, and who's actually setting that stage, and who's collecting that information back? I'm just curious, where do you think project forward? Like, where do you think it's going in the enterprise space?
Man, there's a lot there. For us as a business, our customers will create a Standify account, username, password, and then they authenticate with their Instagram, Facebook. We're approved with YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, all these. And so the data that we have is yours, and we're using it to populate your dashboards and your insights and all of that. But like we have this beverage company versus that one that are arch rivals. We don't cross pollinate and share their data with each other. Yet we have industry insights that are going to help all parties and rise the tide of all boats. So that conversation of like governance and where to limit some of these and others is pretty wide open right now, beyond privacy and GDPR and all that stuff, which is pretty clear cut. At least it is. Actually, we do not want to get into what's going on in the UK with people going to jail for their social media posts, but we understand that privacy is a big deal, and I think that's probably the one area where who owns the data and why, which got figured out by Facebook a long time ago, is probably the area that needs to be reevaluated. I don't, not by us. Like we have the platforms and the data, and we're delivering the value to the brands. Period. The rest is who inside the org cares. And the one thing I want to say there is the change that we're seeing, but it's still a little bit of theory, but it's like pretty well informed theory. Leadership within even the enterprise now is starting to be millennials, at least. And then some really fast moving Gen Zs are coming into leadership role, and they're digital natives. They grew up in this
Yep.
stuff. So it's not QBR stuff, sure, but you know that it's humans on a level that is very like well understood by the worker themselves, which I don't know it's been that way for the other 20 years of business?
Well, so I mean, there's the set of questions around governance and data at rest, like who owns it, where is it going, what? Okay, put all that aside for a moment. Not that it's not important; it's massively important. But I agree with you. I think it's fairly well understood. Then there's data literacy, and I think that's part of what you're leaning into is like we're starting to get more data literate folks who are coming through. But it still seems as though what you're describing in terms of the sentiment of the customer, the sentiment of the market towards the product is not just a marketing concern. Sales will want to know more about it. They'll have specific questions they'll want to ask about that sentiment, nuances. The product team, if it's a software product or even another kind, will want to ask or understand specific nuances. It's not just, hey, it's all good. It's more about, well, what did people like about it? What were they calling out? What were they interested in? Maybe even sales wants to know about the timing. Were there events? Were there moments? Were there longer time periods? What was the response rate? So then that's where I was going with sort of the thinking about the data insights. And maybe I should have added that word, but like thinking about that enterprise QBR, like there's a conversation to be had there where you'd almost want to, and I mean this in a positive way, interrogate this expert agent who understands, has at its disposal all this information, and you can start asking questions and interacting back and forth as you're also discussing other things. Like this suddenly gets mixed into everything else. And I'm I've now spoken to a number of founders who are building products that have a similar, but from very different dimensions, very different parts of the business, have a similar sort of unlock. And I'm curious how you, it's probably way too early to think about this, but thinking about how you unlock that and make that available and how you find that route, are you getting some signal that people outside marketing care or understand, or is it still too early to see that?
Yeah, so we are seeing the early signal that it is in multiple parts of the organization that see the value here. And what it looks like is where everything is headed. And this is where we want it to go. And this is inside our sort of boardroom, little trade secrets here. But again, it's not, this isn't wildly fantastical. We have enough data and we'll continue to have more and more to be able to be kind of like an oracle of sorts for the entire org, right? And Oracle chose that name, which is a shame because it's a perfect, like,
The great
be
name.
able to ask the data source anything, and they'll be able to tell you pretty well informed what the answers are to your questions or what the guiding, sort of information is. And yeah, that's going to be valuable to all parts of the org. And as you were talking, I was thinking the metaphor that is probably where we are now is in like the world of medicine way back, I don't know, 50 years ago or more, you had like a doctor. And like, yeah, there were
Hmm.
different kinds, and a surgeon and a general practitioner, but like really you go to the doctor and they figure it out. And then now your medical records are in a centralized database of sorts, and then all kinds of doctors can see what's going on, and they know this that's versus that correlates with this, and which medicine is that. And that is where in the marketing world we're getting into the time now where the doctors weren't talking to each other, and sales might not actually talk to marketing that much, which might not talk to retention. They do, but they don't share the same kinds of insights. We now have a central body, and we can be that nervous system, maybe, or at least the brain, because we have the data that's the most important, the social part of social, that hasn't ever really been captured because it's been so hard to.
So as you think about that, I mean, it's incredibly important to get the terminology right, to get to a common language, to common descriptions. And how have you managed some of those trust elements as you're working with the insights specifically? Like obviously and you already described it. You've already established yourselves and figured out ways to deal with trust of the actual conversation. But what about the other side? How do you ensure that the insights you're finding are actually appropriate to the data set that they're being
Yep.
consumed from?
So right now, most of our insights are just data-driven correlations. So there's
Mm.
not really much of a,
It's like
there's not,
label and report. I mean, that
sure,
can give you a lot of information.
right. So like, for a given post, you had 2,000 comments. It was positive sentiment by about 78% or something. And then within there, what we have is like a sort of like a word cloud. Here are the most populous terms that people said, right? So on the positive side, you could say like you had a video with a puppy in it, or puppy, 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 puppy. Oh my God, cutest, 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 right? So you get to feel for what was working there. And then for stuff that went the wrong way, a viral hit for negative reasons. We've had a few of those with our brands where what they posted did not hit their audience well. And we see the numbers go crazy with all kinds of comments, angry people, and we can take that and make sense of it. And so, but insight, we can show you why they didn't like it and then what you should do about it. So the insight, that like the real like crisp, most accurate definition of insight, we're still so early on. I don't know that what we're doing is insight, actionable insights. You should do this next. We could say you should do more with puppies because there's a lot of, they love the puppies there. But I think that we're 4 months old in market, 4.5. So you know what I
But there's
mean?
still a lot of gap. To your point, there's still a lot of gap, right? There's a lot to know just by understanding how the conversations are moving
Hmm.
and how the conversations are developing. So
And
there's
and what I just
mm,
want to say there, what we're seeing immediately is just even having the sort of lights turned on for brands, marketers, community managers to see why this was liked instead of having to scroll through, literally, they'd have to manually scroll through comments to try and make an approximation. We can tell you exactly what you should be looking at, and you can use that to correlate into what you want to do with your business. So it's really just empowerment. But as we go, we know the more data we have, the more the insights are actionable. And we're excited to see where that can go because I mean, we see a world where we can tell you what to post when and to who and why and defend it and should see really strong upticks to performance because it's objective data. It's not subjective. You know, we're
yeah,
going to
and
have like we're going to decode your messaging strategy.
yeah, it's a near perfect use case for language models, right? You not
Yes.
only are you using them on the generative side to output, but also interpreting all this data set that you want interpreted, but you just can't hire that many people to go read that many threads and make sense of it consistently over and over and over again, and then aggregate it to get so you get a reasonable image or view from a data standpoint of what's actually happening.
Yes, and I have to say we run into this in the first few minutes of every nearly every conversation we have with potential customers is there's this perception question of like, so you're just doing everything for us? Like replies to the comments and all of that? And the answer is not necessarily. We can just auto reply to all the comments. There are some companies that like that. It's mostly like media, entertainment, even like sports highlights kind of stuff. They just want to be just in there. Yeah, right. I know, that kind of stuff. But everybody else, they want to understand. They want to be human in the loop. And we draft replies in an inbox where there is a human who's approving or editing and really like, skewing and
Tuning.
polishing and honing. And they do that less and less. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And then they have a trust in us and we understand the brand to where that person can now check in a few minutes a day and do their thing and get back to doing more strategically valuable things with their time and their knowledge of what's going on with us. So again, we're like empowering, not automating for the sake of automation. We're just trying to get you back to the important work that you need to get done.
So, I mean, those are people who are now very comfortable with using an AI system and they're thinking differently about their work. So that leads me to the question that I often ask, which is what human skill do you think people really need to focus on and develop to really truly be ready to take advantage of and be generative in this sort of world of AI?
Yeah, we're seeing this front lines. So this is a pretty biased opinion of just what I've been seeing
Perfect.
in our customers. Um, the kind of questions that we get from people within larger brands, sometimes you can tell that they don't really use AI a lot. AI
Mm,
tools. They just don't. They don't. They're not fluent in prompting and whatever. And then there are others who are. And literally, just in the past 4 months, we're seeing more and more people feel more confident in the questions they're asking, which shows they're getting more involved in the tools, which probably means they're getting out of their comfort zone and trying new things. And so I would say today, what's seems to be the most important thing for people in sort of a human productivity sense is get comfortable with the uncomfortable
mm.
uh, learning, like in an environment that's disruptive. Don't hold back and quiet down and hunker down. Get out there and really get your hands dirty and mess a bunch of stuff up. Write some really crappy prompts. Make a crappy video. Like the more that people can get comfortable with being uncomfortable in new environments, the better they'll be in the long run because of how disruptive everything is right now. The chance is going to favor the prepared, and the ones who don't do that are the first that will be escorted out of the way.
Yeah. I'm hearing you also talk about that mindset towards experimentation. Like try things, try the experiments, get out there and see what's possible. Do you worry at all that as people go down that road, there's just not a lot of feedback necessarily because everything's changing so quickly?
In some cases, yes. But that trade-off of what you learned by doing it with no feedback, the learning curve is so fast. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this, and most
Yeah.
people who are watching this understand. Go play around with Midjourney. Go play with Lovable. They all have free versions. Go play. And in an hour, everyone's like, whoa, what you could do yourself. Make your own website in an hour, fast. And so that, no feedback for you, but you've got your own experience there, and now you're empowered. And now you can do more with your time to get even better at it. And the people who take their Netflix watching time away or their video game time away to go get way better at building websites, Lovable or Replit or whatever, those are the people that are building the skill sets that will make them durable in the new world that's already here. If you're not feeling it in your org, wait till next week. Like it's coming. And you're seeing, everybody's seeing that. So yeah, it's a great time to be curious and to use your time accordingly.
Yeah, I love it. Experiment, be curious, be a learner is, I think, the other piece, because that's ultimately you're describing a person who's going out there and trying to learn, trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well,
The world of AI, I suppose like a year ago, I had friends who were like, still, even just a year ago, they're like, blockchain was a bunch of nothing, and this is just nothing. It's just automation in disguise. These models are hallucinating. And those people are in trouble if they're still feeling that way now, because the value is real. And the deniers, they're gonna have a lot of trouble. AI is gonna disrupt jobs. It's gonna take away current roles, but that doesn't mean that person doesn't get to do more things. That role just doesn't exist anymore. I really, really, you hear this kind of stuff, podcasts or whatever, people like millions of jobs are gonna go away. Yeah, and then like millions of other opportunities are gonna be there. Everyone can have their own side income streams, helping their local businesses with stuff that is AI powered that helps humans get more done. Like, period. Maybe it's going to be that there's 100 million more entrepreneurs in the world in the next year in a good way, you know?
this is also why I go back to the those AI initiatives and how they're getting used inside the business. It's not just about applying AI. People are being creative. Not everyone, certainly, but there are folks being creative about looking across the business and saying, you know what, this is a problem that's never been solved. We've never had a good way of doing X. Maybe we can finally go solve that problem. And I think those are the moments that start to create the new roles. Those are the places where you start discovering those new areas of focus where you want a person to lean in, and you find those new opportunities. But it comes back to what you just said. You better experiment. You better go play with it, because you won't find any of that if you're not trying to look around, if you're not sort of open-minded about learning and seeing what's in the landscape.
And the thing that I agree, and the thing that makes this era really important is the ones who are making major disruptive changes to their own organizations by use of AI and incorporating that into their business. And this what Shopify's got a big initiative, and Intercom and some of these
Hmm.
others are saying, if you do not utilize AI, you will be on the chopping block. And if you have a hire you want to make on your team, you need to show first that it can't be done with AI. Like, these companies are innovative, like world leading companies. This isn't a tchotchke thing over here that's being done by brick and mortar legacy old. These are like, and Microsoft and all of them are making huge changes. These are very smart companies. So I think it's so validated already. The rest of the sort of trickle down effect is coming, and that should help people understand this is not a head fake. Now, I was deep in the blockchain world. I did in 2017 ICO days, 2018, L1s and L2s and all that. I was in there because decentralization does help business a lot. It does
Hmm.
in theory and, some practice, but doesn't necessarily move the needle immediately, where AI absolutely does. And so, I feel like this is so different. And, everybody said this, but like you look at like internet, how that changed business, and then mobile, how that changed business again. This is bigger than mobile for sure, I think. And then maybe bigger than the internet transformation because of how much more can get done now that internet is here. There's a compounding effect of human capability with internet already there. So this transformation is actually bigger.
Well, it takes time to even to understand that. It takes time to go figure out how to best apply those changes when they start to show up, right? It wasn't super obvious to everyone at the beginning of the internet. I remember I had arguments, well, light arguments with people around multimedia versus streaming. And I was leaning into the no, streaming's going to be a thing. And this was the 90s, and people were saying, I think we're still going to need to send around CD-ROMs. Like, that dates me, obviously, but like, it was so obvious that no, physical media is going to be gone. No one will want to actually hand around physical media. Everything's going to move into this other world. And I think the agent moment is very similar. It's to your point earlier. agents talking to agents is fine because there's still a human. If you backchain it far enough, there's still a human that's asking for a task to get completed. But we're just scratching the surface how what that's going to look like. Hank, thank you so much. Wonderful conversation today. Really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Matt. This was great.